Good morning, friends. We are learning our subject Machine Learning 3170724. Right? Now, in that, we are learning Module 3, that is Modeling and Evolution. Fine. So, what we have studied in the last lecture, that was, we can say, what is the performance evaluation of a particular model, right? For that, we have seen accuracy, then we can say sensitivity, specificity, then what else? F measure, right? This is what we have seen, right? And just to have the idea that what is the true positive, true negative, false positive and false negative, for that we can say, let us see this simple table. What is there in it? Predicted win and actual win. When both are win-win, that is predicted and actual, that means it is true positive, right? Predicted is win, that means it is positive. Win is the positive thing which we want to have, and loss is the negative, right? So true positive is where predicted win and actual win is there, right? Now we can say that what is that? The false positive. False positive means what? That falsely it is predicting that it is win. Falsely predicting it is win. Now here we can say actual is loss. Actual is loss. But falsely predicted win. Right? So this is called false positive. Falsely it is saying that win is there, right? So false positive is that, and that is equal to 4. Then after we can say that predicted loss. So negativity, right? Loss means negativity, that is n, right? But actual is win. So falsely saying that we are having loss. So it is called false negative. Here we can say that actual is loss and predicted is also loss, right? Both the way it is negative, so we can say it is true negative, and that is equal to this 9 from this table, right? And this table where we are saying that predicted win, predicted loss, actual win, actual loss, or we can say for any other example like cancer example is there, where we can say that the predicted cancer and actual cancer, predicted cancer and actual not cancer, right? Something like that is given in the table. That table is called as the confusion matrix, right? That was the recall of last lecture, right? And what we can see is we have found the accuracy. This is model accuracy. Then after we can say the error rate, right? Then after the kappa value. Then after the sensitivity, right? Then specificity, precision, recall, F measure, right? So if this is the example, that's what I was talking of. That is, it is actual and predicted class. So from that we have to find the parameters, that is evaluating parameters of the model. They are the accuracy, sensitivity, specificity, precision, recall, and many more, right? So this here it is given. Cancer is yes, cancer is no, right? This is actual class, right? See the way it is given, that you have to see what is actual and what is predicted. Here the prediction is given. Fine. In the previous example, what was that? Here the predicted was given and here actual was there. So please do not confuse with that. Okay. Now, what is the case here? Cancer is equal to yes. Cancer is equal to no for actual class. And here is the predicted one. Right? Here is the predicted one. So what we can say is cancer is equal to yes. This is also yes and this is also yes. So it is true positive. Right? It is true positive. Isn't it? Cancer is equal to no. This is predicted one. Right? Cancer is equal to no. That is a predicted one. So it is negativity. Right? And you can say but but what we can say is actual is yes, actual is yes. So what does that mean? Falsely it has detected that cancer is not there, right? Cancer is not there, isn't it? So what we can say about that is it is what? Fn, right? So this way you have to detect what is true positive, what is true negative, what is false positive, and what is uh, false negative, right? So this is what we have to find, and then after we can put them in the equation and can find the model evaluation parameters, right? Okay, so let us start. Today, evaluating the performance of a model. We have already seen that. Yes, but one more thing is that is ROC. What is ROC? It is receiver operating characteristic curve. Receiver operating characteristic curves. Right. So what is that in that? Visualization is an easier and more effective way to understand the model performance. It is but obvious, which you can visualize, you can understand it well. It also helps in comparing the efficiency of two models. Obviously, if we are having two curves, we can see that which one is performing better. So, receiver operating characteristic curve helps in visualizing the performance of a classification model. You can see in this particular subject, we haven't yet seen what is classification method, what is regression method, what is clustering method, but the way the author of this book understand is it says that first of all we should know that how we should select the model, how we can evaluate the model, and then after we should learn the actual algorithms, right? So you can say that we do not know classification. Okay, at least I can tell you classification is where we are having the data wherein class labels are given. What does that mean? That means if your data means if you are having say fruits, okay, you are having say fruits data, in that it is mentioned that fruit with say red color, then you can say its size, then you can say shape, right? With that you can say it is apple. It is already written. It is already written in the data. The label is already there in the data. That is what is the classification, right? So we can say this is given not only for only this fruit is apple, but for other data also it is being labeled that it is this particular fruit, right? Say apple is there, banana is there, right? Orange is there. So the data wherein the label is already given that it is this, right? And for such thing we can say that it is the classification data. Okay, what we do with classification is for the available data, we train the model and we make the model understand, that is we make the machine understand that what are the characteristic features, patterns of the fruit of whatever data type is already given. And based on that, if a new fruit comes, then it will be able to detect it, predict it for nearly match fruit. I mean, say if we have only considered the color as red, one feature only we understood, that is the color is red and apple is given, you can say it is apple. But if instead of apple, if the tomato is given, then what will it do? Will it consider that tomato, if tomato is given, will it relate or will it say that it is orange? Will it be able to say? I'm saying we are only considering the feature that is color. So from the color of tomato, will we be able to say it as orange or nearly equal to orange? No, we cannot. We may say it is nearly equal to apple. Are you getting this? This is the way classification works in normal terms, right? Because just now we do not know all the classification algorithms, right? But the way we understand or we study this subject is, first of all, we should have the idea how we can select the model, how we can build the model, how we can evaluate the model, and how we can improve the model. And after that, we'll be using the machine learning algorithms. They are the classification, clustering, regression, many more, right? So for that, we can say at least this thing we should know, isn't it? So what this receiver operating characteristic says, it helps in visualizing the performance of a classification model. It shows the efficiency of a model in the detection of true positives while avoiding the occurrence of false positives. Are you getting what it gives us? It gives us the true positives, and while it is avoiding the false positives. Okay. To refresh our memory, true positives are those cases where the model has correctly classified the data instances as the class of interest, right? I have just shown you, I have recalled you the last lecture because of this only, because we can have the idea, fine? Now, on the other hand, false positives are those cases where the model incorrectly classified data instances as class of interest. So using the same example, in the case the model has incorrectly classified the tumors as malignant, that is tumors which are actually have been classified as malignant, right? So what we can say is we can find the true positive rate and false positive rate, right? So how we can find that? For that, the equation is true positive rate, that is equal to TP upon TP plus Fn, and false positive rate is Fp upon Fp plus Tn. You can say true positive and true negative. Yes, that's what we already know. True positive is known to us, true negative is known to us, false positive is known to us, and false negative also is known to us. Now here what we want to find is true positive rate. So for that rate, we can say we have to divide the true positive by Tp plus Fn, and the same way we can say for false positive rate, that is Fp, divided by false positive plus true negative. Okay. In the ROC curve, the Fp rate is plotted in the horizontal axis. I'll show you the figure against true positive rate. Okay, horizontal axis is for false positive rate and vertical axis is for positive rate. Okay, this is true positive and this is false positive, right? This is the way the ROC curve. See, this is being plotted, okay? And area under the curve. This is the curve is there, right? This is the curve. Under that, whatever is there, it is area under the curve, right? And from that, what we can predict? What we can predict? That's what we would like to know. Because what we are doing is we are evaluating the performance of a model. So for this, we'll be able to say that this model is better than the other. It is having this much predictivity or whatever, right? Okay, so let us study that. We have seen that horizontal axis is for false positive rate and vertical axis is for false positive rate. Okay, and at the different classification threshold. If we assume a lower value of classification threshold, the model classifies more items as positive. Hence, the values of both false positives and true positives will increase. The area under the curve, as in figure, is the area of two-dimensional space under the curve extending from 0, 0 to 1, 1. We can see here 0, 0 to this is 1 and this is also 1, right? X is 1, Y is 1. So we can say it is extending from 0, 0 to 1, right? Where each point on the curve gives a set of true and false positive values at a classification threshold. Now what we can see here, see, this is true positive rate, this is false positive rate, and this is the curve, right? This is the curve. Now what is given? This is this gray color. The gray color portion is the area under the curve, isn't it? Area under the curve. And for this, not exactly, but if I want to find the area of this one, can we say that it is similar looking like triangle? So at least it should be having the area as 1 by 2 BH, right? And that will be equal to, say, 1 by 2 into, this is 1 and this is also 1. So 1 into 1. So almost 0.5. Not exactly 0.5, it will be more than that. Isn't it? Because we have exactly considered the triangle only, but it is not the exact triangle. Some more area is also there. So we can say that for this particular figure, the area under the curve is more than that of the 0.5, right? More than that of the 0.5, okay? Now, this curve gives an indication of predictive quality of a model. How much better, how much good model can predict, right? So that's what it is giving us. AUC, area under the curve, okay, ranges from 0 to 1. For this figure, it is given, right? And you can say that if it is having less than 0.5, that is the area under the curve, if it is less than 0.5, we can say it is indicating that classifier has no predictive ability. If it is less than 0.5, or we can say it is in the range of 0.5 to 0.6, we can say it is having almost no predictivity, right? So what about the figure B? It shows two curves for two classifiers, classifier 1 and classifier 2. This is second one, that is inner one, is for classifier 2 and outer one is for classifier 1. So what we can say about that? it is quite obvious that AUC for classifier 1 is more than that of the classifier 2. It is but obvious. This is the outer curve. So the area under that curve will be more than that of the inner curve. Isn't it? It's but obvious. So we can say that classifier 1 is better than the classifier 2. Okay. This is what is ROC. What it is? Receiver operating characteristic curve. Okay, receiver operating characteristic curve, where what we are having is we are having the true positive rates at the vertical side and false positive rate at the x side, right? Yeah. Now, a quick indicative interpretation of the predictive values from 0.5 to 1 is where you can say 0.5 to 0.6, the area under the curve, right? If it is in the range of 0.5 to 0.6, we can say that almost no predictive ability is there. 0.6 to 0.7, that means weak predictive ability is there. 0.7 to 0.8, that means fair predictive ability is there. 0.8 to 0.9, good predictive ability is there. And 0.9 to 1.0, excellent predictive ability is there. Now, we would like to know about the supervised learning. Classification is also supervised learning, isn't it? Okay. In that, we want to know about the regression. What is that? A well-fitted regression model churns out predicted values close to the actual values. Hence, a regression model which ensures that the difference between predicted and actual values is low can be considered as the good model. Figure represents very simple problem of real estate value prediction solved using linear regression model. Let me show you. See, here what is that? This is the x-axis where we have considered the area, and y-axis where we have considered value of the apartment unit. Now, what is the regression, or we can say linear regression model? In that, let me tell you at least the idea. That is, linear regression follows the equation of y is equal to alpha plus beta x. That is, you can say it is following the equation of a line. Now, in that, what is the case? That the model is predicting the values. Okay, the model is predicting the values. What should be there? We should be having the actual value also, right? Now, what is that? That is, it is trying to fit all the values. Which values? The predicted values. It is trying to fit all of them, not all, almost all, right? And what I said is trying to fit. It is not necessary that it will fit only. It is trying to fit the predicted values as a line. You can see the line is there, right? This is the line and this is the predicted value. Okay, all these are the predicted values. This circle. So what it tries is, it tries to fit a line. It is trying to fit a line, and you can say that try to have a line with almost all points included on the line, right? When you can say you are having 2 points, you can join them and you can have the line, right? So here what we are doing is, say these circles are there, these are the points. Okay, we are trying to join them in such a way that we are not having a curve, but we are having a straight line. Okay, so this particular point, we can say that it is not exactly on the line, but we have tried to have the line which is trying to fit all the predicted values, right? So that equation is y is equal to alpha plus beta x. Okay. Now what to do is we want to find the difference, that is predicted value and actual value. Predicted value is the prediction by our model, that is a regression model, linear regression model, and the actual value, we should find the difference, isn't it? Okay, so what it says, the area is the predictor variable. This is say x, and we can say that target variable, that is what we are going to predict. So that is, we can say it is the value of the apartment unit, right? Now for certain value of x, say x hat, the value of y is predicted, and that is say y hat, whereas the actual value of y is say y, capital Y. The distance between actual value and the fitted or predicted value, that is y hat, is known as the residue. What do we mean to say is the difference between this predicted and the actual value is said as the residue. The regression model can be considered to be fitted well if the difference between actual and predicted value is less. That is, the residual value is less. If we say that whatever I predicted that was only available, then it is a perfect model, isn't it? So we should try to have the residual value as less as possible, right? Okay, so R squared is a good measure to evaluate the model fitness. It is also known as the coefficient of determination, or for multiple regression, the coefficient of determination. Now, what is that? For that, we can say R squared value, which lies between 0 to 1, with the larger value representing a better fit, and it is calculated as SST, that is sum of squares total, right? And what is SSE is sum of square errors, right? So R square is equal to SST minus SSE upon SST. Now, what are these SST and SSE that we are interested in knowing? So, for SST is sum of squares total. So, what we are having is square differences of each observation from the overall mean. So, that is equal to sigma yi minus y bar whole square, and where we know that y bar is the mean. Okay. Now sum of squared errors, that is SSE of prediction. How we can find that? That is sum of these squared residuals. This was what? Sum of squares errors. Total. Okay. So that we have considered yi minus y bar mean. Here it is sum of squared errors, and that will be where we can say we'll be considering the y hat. Whatever is the actual value minus, you can say whatever is the predicted value whole square, right? Okay, so that is sum of the squared residuals. And y hat is the predicted value of y, and capital Y is the actual value of y. Now for unsupervised learning, that is clustering. For that, what should be the evaluation parameter? Okay, let us see. Clustering algorithm. First of all, we should know what is clustering. Okay, so let me tell you that first. It is unsupervised. Okay, so nobody is going to control it. Nobody is going to control it. No, we can say nobody is going to monitor. Monitor means If you are doing something wrong, I'll say, you are doing wrong, correct it. Okay. So what is that? That is a supervision. If something is going wrong, somebody else have to correct you. That is a supervision or supervised learning model. And unsupervised, that means suppose you are reading the book. So from that, what you understood, that is what is your knowledge. Whether it is correct or not, nobody is going to tell you. Right? That is unsupervised learning. Right? Now, what do we want to have is clustering. Clustering is where you can say whatever data is there based on the similarity. What sort of similarity? Let me tell you. In your class, let us consider that people who are there in the range of 50 to 60 percentage marks. So they are similar, okay, almost similar. This is a group we have created. 50 to 60 percentage means one group, okay. You can say 80 to 90 percentage, that is there in one group, okay. So what we are considering is similarity feature, that is you can say percentage. We have tried to see that similar percentages are there, okay, so they are there in one group. If we consider that for insurance policy, for that we can say that people who are having say policy more than that of the 10 lakh, they are considered as the one group, right? People who talk too much, like you can say that people are having the habit of phone calls of say half an hour or 1 hour or more than that. They are considered as talkative people, isn't it? People who are talking very much less, like you can say 2 to 5 minutes they talk, then they are also part of one group, right? They are less talkative, right? And you can say in between also the people are there who are having the habit of talking. This here we have considered from half an hour to you can say 1 hour, right? This much we have considered as the characteristic and they are considered as a group of talkative people. Here we have considered the group of less talkative people, and let us say that in between, that is you can say from 15 minutes to say 20 minutes, or you can say 10 to 20 minutes. If people are talking typically, then we can consider them as the middle range, okay, then they are considered in the middle range, okay. And whatever are similar, you can say here say 5 to 10, 5 to 9, those will be similar to this one, right? Okay, those will be similar to this one or this one, fine. So what we are doing is based on the characteristic, the feature we have selected is how much people talk on phone. So based on that, we have categorized in three parts. If I say talkative, less talkative, or middle range talkative, then it is the label given to them. But labels are used in classification. So how we group the people according to unsupervised learning? In unsupervised learning, we are finding this similarity. If the number or whatever characteristic we are considering that is nearly equal to this group, then we'll put that data in this group, right? Based on similarity only. On the first day of your college, say when you come, you see the people, right? And to whom you talk or to whom you make the friend, you try to find, oh, this person, I like the face, I like the way he talks, or something like that, isn't it? And persons who are similar to you are making the friends, right? Typically, it is the case, isn't it? Similar characteristic, I mean to say, and you are making the group with that. That is what is unsupervised clustering. based on your based on your characteristic, similar characteristic, you are making the group. Okay, that is what is the clustering. So you can say this is the explanation, right? In between explanation, but it should be there, right? Okay. So yeah. So what we say is based on the characteristic, we may make say 2 group, 3 group, 5 group. How many groups we can create? Can we create 1000? Can we create the groups that is number that number is equal to the number of persons available? No, that is not feasible, isn't it? You can say it is overfitted model, isn't it? So we should not do so. So in typical clustering algorithm, how to decide or it is to be provided that how many number of groups you want to have. Fine. Okay. So at least you know what is clustering. Now we can say clustering algorithms try to reveal natural groupings amongst the data sets. However, it is quite tricky to evaluate the performance of a clustering algorithm. Clustering by nature is very subjective. See, when it is number, you can take the difference, you can have the idea. But here what is being said as clustering by nature is very subjective, and whether the cluster is good or bad is often open for the interpretations. It was noted clustering is the eye of the beholder. It will show us these stems from the two different challenges which lie in the process of clustering. One is it is generally known how many clusters can be formulated from a particular data set. I told you that if 1000 people are there, should we make the 1000 clusters? If we make such way, then you can say that in each and every cluster we will be having only one person. So, do we have any advantage of it? No, we do not have. So, what to do for that is you can say that try to reduce that, right? Not the number of clusters is equal to the number of persons, but let us consider say 50% we are considering. Okay, so if say 1000 data is there, will make say 500 clusters, then too you can say only 2% are there in the group, right? So who will decide that how many clusters we should make? How many clusters we should make? Okay, so that depends on a particular algorithm, and you can say you may specify as user. That is also possible, but that depends on the clustering algorithm. Even if the number of clusters is given, the same number of clusters can be formed with different groups of data instances. You can say that if the number of clusters is given, say 5 clusters you have to make, then the same number of clusters can be formed with different groups of data instances. First, you may have considered say 135, then next time when you are considering, you may be taking it as say 145, something like that. Okay, it can be that. In more objective way, it can be said that clustering algorithm is successful if the clusters identified using the algorithm is able to achieve the right results in the overall problem domain. So what does that mean? For example, if clustering is applied for identifying customer segments for a marketing campaign of a new product launch, the clustering can be considered successful only if the marketing campaign ends with a success. If we are doing the campaigning and if we are not getting the success, it is useless, isn't it? So what do we mean to say? That it is able to create right brand recognition resulting in steady revenue from new sales, right? New product sales. So, however, there are couple of popular approaches which are adopted for the cluster quality evaluation, and they are internal evaluation and external evaluation. What are they? Internal evaluation. What is that? The cluster is assessed based on the underlying data that was clustered. So how we can do that? The internal evaluation methods generally measure cluster quality based on homogeneity of the data belonging to the same cluster and heterogeneity of the data belonging to different cluster. What does that mean? Let me say that we are having the groups, right? Friends groups, we can say our friends groups. If I say this is one group, then this is the second group, then this is the third group, right? These three groups are there. Now what do we say is people inside this one group, can we say that they are similar to each other, then only they are there in one group? Yes or no? See, now you cannot say that you are considering all the features. Whatever features you have selected, based on that only you have put them in one group, that is in one cluster. I have considered the characteristic, that is percentage. The result, then I'll be able to put the people in this, they are say of 50 to 60 percentage. I'll be putting people in this group who are having say 70 to 80 percentage. So this is what the feature I considered, okay? Here you can say they are having say 81 to 90 percentage, right? These three groups I have made. So now what is the case? People who are there in this group, they are having similar characteristic. How can you say they are having the similar characteristic? One may be having very much interest in say singing, other may be having very much interest in say painting, one other is there who is having very much interest in say dancing. So how can I say that they are having the homogeneity of the characteristic? See, what feature I consider to make the group? That was the percentage marks, isn't it? Percentage marks. So while we say that people are there in this group because of or based on the feature, that is percentage marks, that means people inside this cluster are having similar percentage, right? Then if I consider their characteristic according to their hobbies like music or dancing or singing, then you can say it is wrong. Fine. So what should we consider is the characteristic which were used to make the groups, clusters, right? So here, say we have considered, for this example, we have considered percentage marks as the feature that is being used to make these clusters, these groups, this segmentation. Okay. So now for this, people who are there in this group, they are having this similar percentage. Yes. Here in this group also it is the same. How can you say that, ma'am, here it is 50 to 60, here it is 70 to 80? What I am saying is inside this group, people are having similar percentage? Of course, yes. In this group, yes, they are having similar percentage. Okay, so what about these and this group? Relation, if we are trying to find, obviously they are different. They are different, isn't it? This is 50 to 60 and this is 70 to 80. Different groups are there and they are heterogeneous. Okay. In relation to these two clusters, they are heterogeneous, but inside the cluster, whatever is the data, that is homogeneous. Hope you are clear. So what we say is The internal evaluation methods generally measure cluster quality based on homogeneity of the data belonging to the same cluster and heterogeneity of the data belonging to the different clusters. The homogeneity heterogeneity is decided by some similarity measure, right? Here we have considered the percentage, and with that we can find the distance. Okay, the typical way, and some more are also there. So what are others? For example, Selhood coefficient, which is one of the most popular internal evaluation methods, uses distance like Euclidean distance, Manhattan distance. What is Euclidean distance? That we are learning since our 12th, right? To find the distance between 2 points, we are using it as under root of x1 minus x2 square plus y1 minus y2 square, right? That you can visualize. Okay, so Euclidean distance or Manhattan distance or many other types of distance equations are available that commonly we use between the data elements as a similarity measure, right? So what is that in the internal evaluation? We say that we are using the Silhouette width. So what is that? Silhouette width is equal to B of I minus A of I upon max A of I and U of I, right? So the value of Silhouette width ranges between -1 to +1 with a high value indicating high intra-cluster homogeneity and inter-cluster heterogeneity. Inside the cluster, that is intra, you are having the homogeneity, and in relation with the other cluster, it is having the heterogeneity. A of I is the average distance between the ith data instance and all other data instances belonging to the same cluster. And Bi is the lowest average distance between the ith data instance and data instances all over all the other clusters, right? So here we can say, here is a figure wherein you can say that this is the cluster 1. The different symbols are used. This is hollow circle. You can say this is rectangle, that is for cluster 4. This is cluster 3, where you can say triangle, bold triangle is used for depicting the cluster 3, and for cluster 2 we can say it as round, black round, wholly filled, it is cluster 2, right? So this is what is given to us, that data shown, okay, data shown. The B holder, we were saying that, what do you say is cluster is a B holder, right? So that, what does that mean? It is showing us the way it is done, right? It is giving us the visualization. Fine, okay. So what do we say is, in figure we are showing the cluster 1, 2, 3, 4. Let us consider an arbitrary data element, say I, in cluster 1, where in cluster 1, here AI is being shown. Now, what is the case? The average distances of all A we are saying, of different data elements from the ith data element in cluster 1, assuming there are n data elements, mathematically we can say it is A of I, that is equal to AI1, AI2, all edited, addition is done, and divide by n1. What is B? What is B? B is, how we see the B, that is Bi is equal to minimum of B average, B average, B average. What is B? That is for say cluster 4. What is B is considered for cluster 4. A is considered for cluster 1. B is considered for cluster 4. Right? You can say why not cluster 2? You can take, but the way the figure is being presented here, we are considering the distance between the cluster 1 and cluster 2, right? So for that we can say that B4, B14 average, B14, why B14? It is because we are having the distance, or we are trying to have the relation between the cluster 1 and cluster 4, right? That is why it is B14 average, and that is equal to B141, B142, B14, N4, and upon that we are having the N4, right? The points are there, isn't it? So we'll be finding the distance between B1, I mean, uh, point from cluster 1 and point from cluster 4, right? So we are trying to find that distance. So how we'll be able to have, that is using B14 average. That's what we want to find, okay? And after that, that is this average if we find, after that what we have to do is B of I, that is equal to minimum of B average, B average, B average. Whatever the B averages are there, that's what we'll be taking as the minimum of. Okay. Now, where n is the total number of elements in the cluster 4, in the same way we can calculate the values of B average, P of I is the minimum of all these values, right? This is what we have just seen. In this approach, class label is known for the data set subjected to clustering. Oh God, class label is there in the clustering? So is it the classification? Is it the supervised learning? No, it is not. So what it is? However, quite obviously, the known class labels are not part of the data used for clustering. Okay, they are not used for clustering. The cluster algorithm is assessed based on how close the results are compared to those known class labels, right? See, we do not have the data wherein you are saying that the class labels are there. They are the classification data, but the way we have done our clustering, we try to find the distance. We are trying to minimize the distance between the intra-cluster points, as well as we have tried to maximize the distance between the two different clusters, right? After that, the results are being compared with the classified data, whatever is already there with us, and then we can say, okay, it is fine, right? So that is not part of the clustering, but the data is there with us. And for example, the purity is one of the most popular measure of cluster algorithms, evaluates the extent to which clusters contain a single class. For say data set having and data instances and C known class labels, which generates K clusters, for purity is measured as 1 upon n sigma max of K intersection C, right? So this is the way we are finding the evaluation, what performance measures we are doing, right? And that is using the external evaluation. So in next class we'll see how to improve the performance model, because today we have evaluated the model. Okay, so that's all for today.